There's a location underneath here where we can put a cam position sensor. We need that because we no longer have a distributor to tell us when number one is going to fire. So we need to use a Hall effect sensor on the camshaft, on at least one of them, 1, 2, 3 side, to know when to fire the ignition. This engine has a crank fired ignition. It fires each coil on plug individually. There are no wasted sparks. The firing order can be programmed in the ECU, but getting number one to fire at the right time is really important. Okay, I just verified that the engine's at top dead center for number one. That's because this is the Z1 mark. It's at top dead center. And the valves are both closed on cylinder number one. So this is the compression stroke. I have my leak down tester connected. It's pumping in air and it's creating a seal. So this is Z1 top dead center for cylinder number one. Now we need to back it off 120 degrees so we can set the cam sensor. So that gives the computer just a little bit of time in order for it to determine where the cam is going to be for number one. So now I can just back the engine up 120 degrees so we can put that cam sensor in the recommended place. So there's the mark right there. $120, and I'm going to go a little bit past it. If there's any slack in the chains right now, we'll turn it the correct direction now to just get right exactly to 120. So that's it right there. 120 degrees before top dead center on number one. So down here where my finger is, that's the mark for Z1. So this is, roughly here, which is more than 90. So it'd be kind of here, here, and here. Those are the three marks on the pulley for doing like valve adjustments and stuff. And then to get this cam cover off, I'm considering welding this. This is a weld nut. I'm gonna weld it to the back of the cover, and then I'm gonna have to use a slide hammer to just pull it. I don't want to damage any of the surface here or try to pry it out. This will basically just pop it out, hopefully all in the same direction without tilting it or anything like that. So we'll try this. This goes in the trash, and there's nothing to damage on the other side of that. There's no rubber seals or anything. It's basically the cam rolling around there in the bore. All right, there it is. It's out. It's a little harder than I thought. So there's the cam. That's the cam itself. The dark black is the cam, and then the lighter gray is the aluminum. So let's put the adapter in and mark it for drilling. So I've loaded a bunch of tape in there against the cam to the housing. So we got to drill into the actual steel camshaft. So hopefully none of those filings or shrapnel goes into the bore. That's why I've taped it all up. And then the instructions say to put it on in this orientation. So we'll cinch those down, and then there's a drill bushing that goes in that hole. So according to the directions, I think that's the right orientation. I'm just going to mark it with a Sharpie first. I'm getting ready to drill the hole in the camshaft so we can tap it and put a bolt in there so that the sensor has a pickup. Every time the cam goes around, it'll pick up that bolt location. So there's a slight change here. I turned this whole adapter 120 degrees to the right. And the reason being is that if you put this in the uppermost position, the hole that you're going to drill, it lines up with an existing hole in the camshaft. I think it's just a coincidence. Either I could adjust the angle of the sensor, or I could just mount the bracket on a different thing. So it's 120 degrees right now before top dead center. That I think is a good number for the computer to pick up on. I could rotate it back to like 90 degrees or maybe 150 degrees, but I prefer to keep it 120. That's why I've gone ahead and just rotated the adapter, and we'll put the bolt right here. It's not going to affect the installation of the engine or anything like that. It's just a workaround there. And this tape line is where I know to stop. Clear those chips every once in a while. So now we'll go ahead and take this off and clean up all the metal that's in there. So I had taped all inside there, so there was no possible way that the debris can go inside the engine. But we'll go ahead and use a magnet and a vacuum, pull all that out so we don't contaminate the engine whatsoever. But that tape should be a good barrier too. Put that in the trash. Okay, I think that's it for now. We'll go ahead and do the tapping and then remove the tape. Okay, so this is the correct tap, M5 by 0.8. So we're going to hold it as straight as we can and just get those threads started. So a little bit of forward pressure to get the threads started, and then once the threads are going, it's just a matter of rotating it so it's not sideways or crooked. So I think we got it. Sometimes it helps to back up a little bit. Clear some chips. If it feels real tight, you just want to clear those chips. It's a blind hole, so all the debris has to come back towards me. And you just don't want to over torque it because it'll break. But this is feeling good. Just want to get some of that off there. I was afraid the cam was going to be a super hard metal, but I think it's only hardened on the ends where that makes contact with the rockers. So this doesn't feel extremely hard. It feels like it's working just fine. And I think that's the bottom of the hole right there. I'm going to mark the tap and make sure that it's gone all the way down, because I think that's about 1/2 inch. Little Sharpie there. And as we pull it out, we'll verify that it went to the bottom of the hole. Pretty sure it did. So if we look at the distance there to the tip, that's definitely 1/2 inch. So that's what they recommend. And the bolt that goes in there is this guy here. And it's nowhere near 1/2 inch long. But it's important that the head of this bolt gets seated all the way up against the cam, because this has been milled flat. So it's just a certain height for the sensor to pick up. So that height is critical. Same thing, we use a magnet to clean it out. And one thing I forgot to do, usually I do this before I tap the hole, but in this case, I'm just going to chamfer the threads a little bit so that when the bolt screws in, it doesn't get hung up on the first couple threads. So let's take a little chamfer there. And then just to make sure I didn't mess it up, I'm going to run the tap in one more time. What we're left with is that hole there with a pretty nice chamfer. The chamfer looks good and the threads look really good, and there's no debris in here because of that tape. It's real clean. I'll get a paper towel and just double check, maybe a Q-tip or something. But okay, I'm satisfied with the cleanliness there. Now let's just thread in this supplied bolt and make sure it works all the way down to the bottom. You can see there it's fully seated against the cam, and that's just finger tight. So no problems here, that's correct. Let's put the sensor in and just verify that the sensor depth is correct. And in order to do that, we'll have to use the correct gasket. So the gasket here now is important. There are some spring washers that go on here, but we're not done taking this apart. So let's just get it together. We'll check the depth. Okay, we can check the depth to the bolt head. And I get 1.348. It's supposed to be 1.32 max. Let's try that again. Okay, that feels like the bolt head. I'm getting 1.34. So in that case, we need to put a washer underneath the head of the bolt, because it should be between 1.3 and 1.32. Let's measure the sensor. The sensor itself is 1.25. If you want like a 30 thousandths gap or 35 thousandths gap, that would be 1.3. So it seems to me the gap is a little bit too large right now. So the best way to fix that is to put a little bit of a washer underneath the head of the bolt on the cam. That's why we didn't Loctite it in already, because if it's not right, it's not right. Just keep checking. So we need a 50 thousandths washer. It's about 39 thousandths thick. So let's put that in there and see if that helps our sensor spacing. Exactly 1.301, which is within the limits. If I could just take a few thousandths off of the washer, I think it'll be just a little bit better. Okay, so this time we're going on with red Loctite. So red Loctite means this is not coming off again. You don't want this coming loose in your engine, so red Loctite is definitely the way to go. And both these surfaces are pristine, brand new, never been used, so I don't need to put any sealant or anything on this, I don't think. I don't think we're going to have a leak here. I just remembered this time we can go ahead and use the spring washers, which are a locking feature. So this is our final time, so we'll go ahead and put these on. And I think I'm going to use blue Loctite on these because I don't want this sensor coming loose. If this sensor comes loose, the engine probably won't start. And actually this torque wrench goes to 8.7, so that's what we want. 8.7 foot-pounds, that's almost it right there. Okay, that's it. So let's double check the depth one more time. And we're same thing, 1.3 is good. 1.31. So the sensor just slips in here, but my sensor is missing an O-ring. It didn't come with it. So I have this assortment of O-rings that I'm just going to find one that fits okay. And hopefully that'll be enough to create a leak-free installation. Actually, that's good. I think it's that one's in. Let's go with that. If it leaks, we'll, cross that bridge later, but I think that'll keep it from leaking. All right, that's it. The cam sensor is now done. And I think that, for the most part, is the rest of the drilling and modifications. The only thing I can think of is adding another O2 sensor to the 456 bank. So that's more drilling and welding. But in terms of what touches the engine, I think that's it. We're going to go ahead and make use of the stock cylinder head temperature sensor. So this one's going to stay. This measures the cylinder head temperature. Oh, and I think I spoke too soon about modifications, because this right here is a knockout or a cutout we have to make so that this adapter can protrude through the engine tin. So it goes, back on like that, but without the hole being cut in the engine tin, there's no way that's going to fit. So they give you a little bit. The factory, has this indentation here. So I'm just going to double check the diameter and make sure it's consistent with the diameter of that, and then we'll just cut that out. Since this adapter is on a non-standard location, I'm going to put a mark on it so it lines up with the cam tower. So if for whatever reason this comes off again, it goes back on the exact same way. So I'm just going to put a mark on the adapter and then once again on the cam tower. So this is an alignment mark just to know, hey, this is the way this goes back on. Okay, we want 2.9, which is right on the inside of that detent. So this oval here kind of coincides with this circle. So the depression was missing right there. So I cut it conservatively, and sure enough, that's where it's interfering. I can slide it over a little bit, but it's going to need a little bit more trimming just in this like 9 o'clock area. Then it'll go on, I think. So there it is, it's in. It fits over the adapter. And when I draw the screws down, it'll probably fit even a little bit better. It feels like it's touching right here. That's the last part that I trimmed, but it's gonna keep it nice and secure, and I don't think it's gonna cause any kind of vibration or anything. So if anything, before I paint it, I might just take a little bit off there so it's got clearance. It used to bolt into the cam tower here, but now it doesn't attach. It's only going to be attached in these two places. There's 2 screws here on the top, and then there's 2 more screws here on the side, and that's it. But this gets supported by the rubber seal too, so this is a pretty secure piece. That's it for all the difficult to install sensors and devices for this PMO EFI project. It required drilling a hole in the heads and in the camshaft and some of the tin. I also had to clearance the console for the crank trigger wheel and had to add in a new bung for the O2 sensor. All the other sensors are pretty much bolt-on. Things like the TPS sensor, the map sensor, all the temperature sensors, the pressure sender unit, those things are just thread right in. So that part is pretty easy. The plumbing for the fuel lines, I may do another video on that one too. I did create a bunch of hard lines myself to make the engine bay look tidy and do the plumbing in a way where all the injectors get the equal amount of pressure. The engine is ready to start up. So look for the next video next week or within a few weeks for the first start video. We should have it up and running pretty quickly now.